Start game now.
Welcome, retro fans, to another edition of the Notes for Gamer. Today we're going to look at another plug-and-play unit, the Coleco Head-to-Head Video Game System plug-and-play unit. This is a two-player model. They also had a one-player model that only had 6 games on it, but this one has 12. How cool is that? As you can see by the price tag, or maybe it's hard to see, I paid a whopping $2.50 at Walmart on the clearance rack for this guy. So what we got here is a little briefcase, kind of plastic, cheap feeling briefcase. I don't think it would survive too much wear and tear, but hey, kind of cool nonetheless. Interesting that the latches here go opposite directions. Looking at the back, you see a picture of the 12 games you can have, and look at that, 2 people holding each their own controller. And it says here at the bottom that this product is not affiliated in any way with the former Coleco Industries Incorporated or its successors. So wait a minute, you're telling me that this product has nothing to do with the original Kinetic Leather Company? I am shocked. I actually think that some of these games are based on the handheld Coleco games that came out way before the Game Boy. But no, you're not going to see any Coleco Vision games on here, and a lot of these games I believe are actually original games. Let's go ahead and pop this guy open and see what we got inside. Inside we got 2 controllers that sit in a cheap plastic tray. Let's see, let's pull out the first controller. So this is your first controller right here. Has an on-off switch, which is working just fine. You put 4 AA batteries in this compartment. You only need batteries in this controller, not the other. There's a little controller port right here. You plug this controller into the controller port. So if you're playing a 2-player game and you're the first player and you really don't like what the second player is doing, all you have to do is take out his controller and you win. Yay, go you. A little home button. This is to reset the system if you want to go back to the main menu. Let's see, we got the select and start buttons. We have kind of a button design that's reminiscent of the Super Nintendo, but we have the worst the worst D-pad on a controller I've ever seen. It's a big square. You can actually feel the arrows with your thumb, and it's very clunky. I do not like that. The controller itself has a little bit of weight due to the batteries, but it feels like it's kind of a cheaper plastic. But nonetheless, let's go ahead and take our cords here, which is interesting that they usually do a yellow and a white for the audio, but it's red. It doesn't really matter which audio you put it in. But let's go ahead and take these audio and video cords, plug them into our system, turn it on, and select the game and just find out if this is worth the $2.50 I invested in it. Let's go to the game. When you turn on the unit, you're immediately greeted with clashing football helmets, and it brings you to the menu screen where, of course, the first game you see is football. European football, that is. Yep, soccer is the first game, even though you saw the American football helmets at the beginning. So let's go ahead and play soccer, and when you do, you find out that, yep, this is very reminiscent of old LCD games. Very much, if you're not familiar with like the Coleco style games, think about like Nintendo Game & Watch and you get a good idea what these games are like. So in soccer, you pass or defend, depending on which side you're on, the ball between people and try and shoot it in the goal at the appropriate time and score more points. This game is bad. The controls are just terrible. Trying to pass it from player to player doesn't always work well, and I just found this one to be quite boring and frustrating. Maybe it's entertaining with 2 players, but I'm guessing both players would just be bored as well. Okay, let's go on to the next game. Next up is basketball, which is basically soccer reskinned with basketball graphics. And just like soccer, it's a bad game. I'm going to pass on this one. Baseball is next. In baseball, you take both sides in alternating turns. You start out as a pitcher, and the first time I played, I thought I was the batter, so I didn't know why I was doing so well. It's because the computer was doing well, and I was doing a bad job pitching. But baseball is very interesting because when you hit the ball, it automatically decides kind of what it's going to be, like a single or double or triple, and it goes through the motions even though you're still fielding the ball. Very interesting, very poorly executed, not fun at all. Football is next. Now, football is based on the classic handheld. I did have a version of the handheld game at one point, and I did enjoy the handheld unit very much, and I really do not like this unit at all. You are either on the defense or the offense. If you're on the defense, you're basically trying to direct your guys and just touch the other guys. If you're on the offense, you can select either run plays, pass plays, or the field goal plays. The field goal plays were kind of interesting because it just seemed like random luck. Actually, when I was playing this game, no one scored a field goal whenever they tried. You just hit the field goal button and it kicks and it shows a graphic and it shows you missing. I don't know if anyone can score a field goal. I'm guessing so, but I didn't see it. But yeah, the running and the passing were all very difficult to pull off. This game just wasn't much fun at all. I recommend finding the original handheld football Coleco unit than playing this. Hockey is next. And hockey is basically a reskin of basketball, which was a reskin of soccer. Just like basketball and just like soccer, hockey is bad and boring. Did not enjoy it. Let's go to next. Car racing. Now this is the first game that is exclusive to the 2-player unit. In it, you pick a style of car, either a sport car or standard car. Really doesn't matter, it plays the same. You pick your length of race, and then you just hit the gas and you avoid people as you hear the engine constantly going, and it's very annoying and it's not much fun, but it does have a pretty cool song at the end. Boxing, another exclusive to the 2-player unit. Boxing is kind of like Activision boxing on the Atari 2600, except you can move more in more ways. In the 2600 version, you could just either go to left or right. Here you can go up and down as well. You can also block to the left or the right. So it's one of the few games that uses all 4 buttons. I think it might be the only game that really uses all 4 buttons. So you either hit with the right or the left, or you block with the right or left. But either way, it doesn't work well. Unlike Activision boxing on the 2600, this was just not fun. So yeah, it did make an interesting sound though. Whenever your boxer got knocked down, it sounded like they ripped the sound from Punch-Out on the NES, so I thought that was interesting. Okay, Racquetball is next. This was on the original 1-player 6-game unit, and it takes turns. It's kind of like Pong, taking turns in a racquetball style. And guess what? It's not fun. Are you catching a theme here? Okay, Wall Breaker is next. Now, Wall Breaker is basically a ripoff of Breakout, and it is an exclusive to the 2-player unit, and it actually controlled really well. I was really surprised. You know, I recently reviewed the Atari 2600 joystick that had a Breakout on it, and one of my criticisms was the paddle games did not control well with the joystick, but this one actually controlled a lot better than that did, and it was very interesting. Reminded me a lot of Arkanoid more than Breakout. Had some power-ups that fell down. Interestingly enough, sometimes when you powered up, you heard the Super Mario Brothers sound effect for getting a mushroom and growing bigger. That kind of, or what, actually that was a Transformer sound, but you know what I'm talking about. So it was very interesting that this was actually the best game on the unit. Now, after a while, it did kind of get drab. The graphics weren't great on it. The graphics on all these games are actually pretty bad. They were so basic. But anyways, yeah, the graphics on this version were very monochrome, if you will. They didn't really explore with the colors. They could have did that. And if you play a 2-player game, you actually have 2 paddles going at the same time, so that's kind of interesting as well. Wall Breaker is the best game on this unit, but I did get bored with it after a round or 2, even though it controlled pretty well. Sea Defender is next, and Sea Defender is another clone. Wall Breaker was kind of a clone of Arkanoid or Breakout. Sea Defender is a clone of Missile Command, except this time you are protecting ships below you. You have a little cursor on screen. It is very difficult to control. Now, Wall Breaker was interesting. This big clunky controller can go left or right just fine, but as soon as you have to go any other direction, it really struggles, and I had a lot of troubles in Sea Defender. Not only that, but when you shoot your missiles, the cloud doesn't affect you the same as the Atari 2600 version. So I would much rather play the Atari 2600 version of Missile Command in any of its forms than this game. Deep Sea Madness is next, because after Sea Defender and after you lost, you're now in the water, and now all these kind of sea creatures are descending upon you. Space Invader style. Yep, this is a Space Invader clone. It worked okay. You're just going to the left or right, so it has that going for it. You have these kind of little seaweed barriers that get shot away. Oftentimes, I found that they got in the way of me shooting the other critters. You can shoot a shark. So this game has a shark. It has that going for it. There's a shark in this game, so at least it has a shark. If you shoot the shark, it restores one of your barriers. Yeah, it's basically a bad Space Invaders clone. It's fun for about maybe 2 or 3 minutes. If you play a 2-player version, you can actually have both players on the screen at the same time, so that's kind of neat. Last but not least is Kung Fu Flycatcher. I know you were all waiting for this one. Another exclusive to the 2-player unit. Kung Fu Flycatcher has you catching a fly. Yeah, so basically what happens is a fly appears on screen, you push a button, and you catch it with your chopsticks, and that's it. It's just a basic how quickly can you push a single button kind of game. And it's laughable that they even call this a game. So yeah, there you go, all 12 games on the Coleco Video Games head-to-head plug-and-play system. Most of them are terrible. Wallbreaker was bearable. I would not recommend this. I don't even think it was worth the $2.50 I paid for it. This is something that only collectors are going to want, maybe Coleco collectors or plug-and-play collectors. But for the most part, this is one to avoid. If you are interested in getting one of these, either this or the one-player version, avoid the one-player version and just go for the second-player version, even if you just get the single controller that has a controller port on top of it. Because, of course, as I said, you can play all games as one player, but I would not recommend this. It doesn't sell on eBay. I didn't see any of these really selling for much of anything, so you can get these cheap if you want them, but it is not worth it in my opinion. So it's going to go right dead last on my rankings. Now, I've only reviewed 2 other units. I've only reviewed the Atari controller plug and play and the Miss Pac-Man, but yeah, this one is one to avoid. So there you go. So I can't recommend this unit, but you know what I can recommend that you do instead of playing this unit? Go over to www.retrovideogamer.co.uk and check out some of the retro goodness they got over there. Yeah, I've been on the forums over there and I've met some cool people over there. They really do a pretty good job talking about retro video games. It is based out of the UK, but you know what? Whether you say Mega Drive or Genesis, they'll accept you over there. So yeah, go check out www.retrovideogamer.co.uk. It's much more entertaining than this plug and play unit. Anyways, guys, thanks for giving me a little part of your day. Hope you enjoyed this review of a bad plug and play system, and I look forward to seeing you next time right here on the No Swear Gamer. Take care, everybody.